At 5:19 local time, the sea is calm. The wind is below 5 knots. Visibility seems endless. On the bridge of the USS George Washington, nobody says a word. Then the radar tone shifts. Not an alarm. Not yet. Just a sharp, unusual spike on the surface display. New contacts. Bearing 210 through 260. The Combat Information Center does not repeat the call. They are already tracking it. 5 returns appear almost at the same moment, spread wide and moving faster than ordinary traffic should. No AIS, no commercial signature, clean hull outlines. Speed, 23 knots, then 25. That is when the carrier feels it. A faint vibration runs through the deck plates as internal systems shift into a different posture. Not combat, not routine either. Something in between. On the bridge, the captain keeps his voice even. Log the contacts, maintain course. The officer of the deck responds at once. Course steady, speed unchanged. Below deck, sailors stop in place. A tractor pauses at the edge of the hangar bay. Yellow shirts hold still, hands resting on tie-downs. Nobody turns around. They know that tone. Not often, but enough. 5 surface contacts, CIC confirms. Multiple bearings, coordinated movement, unidentified. That word matters. At this distance, unidentified does not mean invisible. It means no one is saying more than necessary. Electro-optical cameras begin turning outward one after another, locking onto the contacts as they emerge through the haze. Long gray hulls, sharp bows, military silhouettes. Still no flags in sight. The bridge sends hails anyway. Standard procedure, professional, English first, then Russian. No response. The distance drops. 20 nautical miles, 18, 16. Closest point of approach updates automatically. The number falls again, then again. Someone in CIC says it quietly. They're spreading. The 5 contacts are no longer holding parallel tracks. They begin shifting apart, changing angles, shaping a shallow arc across the carrier's projected path. Not a surround, not a chase, a wall. On the bridge, the captain steps closer to the chart table without touching it. Any emissions? Minimal, CIC replies. Surface search only, no fire control. That is intentional. The ship's sensors are fully engaged now. Radar, infrared, electronic support measures. Everything is recording. Every bearing change, every throttle movement, every second. At 14 miles, the visual picture sharpens. No merchant wakes, no fishing gear. No doubt left. 5 Russian warships. No one says it aloud on the bridge, but everyone knows. The hull shapes are unmistakable. Gray steel, low silhouettes, clean, purposeful lines. They hold formation like they have practiced this exact geometry before. The carrier does not turn. At this size, turning says something, so does refusing to. On the flight deck, the island towers above rows of parked aircraft. Sunlight flashes across the canopies. Elevators stay locked. Nothing launches. Nothing has to. The message is not in movement. It is in restraint. CPA now under 6 miles. CIC reports. That is close enough to erase excuses. Close enough that one mistake could become a global headline. One of the Russian ships inches ahead, its wake thickening as speed rises slightly. Not enough to cut across the carrier's bow, just enough to test the edge. The bridge camera zooms in. Crew members are visible on deck, helmets on. No rushing, no visible weapon teams, controlled, calm, professional. The carrier answers in the same language. Maintain course, the captain says again. The helmsman does not even blink. 6 miles becomes 5. Deep inside the ship, a status light changes from green to amber. No announcement, no siren, only a silent signal that the margin for error is gone. The stretch of ocean between them suddenly feels very small. 5 warships, tight spacing, deliberate angles. This is no accident. And whatever happens next will happen quickly. At 5:24 local time, the geometry shifts. On the surface display, the 5 contacts stop acting like separate ships and begin moving like parts of one machine. Their spacing tightens. Bearings shift by degrees, not miles. Small changes, calculated, precise. Contacts are adjusting course, CIC reports. Maintaining speed, coordinated. That word again. The lead Russian ship eases 10 degrees to port. Another falls back by half a mile, widening the arc. 2 others hold steady on the flanks. From above, it would look less like a line and more like a gate slowly swinging shut. Not pursuit, not encirclement, a barrier. Closest point of approach updates once more. The figures flicker, then settle even lower. 4.3 nautical miles. The carrier's projected track now runs straight through the center of the arc. If she holds course, she passes through the space the Russian ships are shaping around her. If she turns, even slightly, the geometry breaks in their favor. On the bridge, nobody says it. The officer of the deck watches the chart refresh in real time. Every vector is logged automatically. Every bearing change marked to the second. The captain studies the surface picture without expression. Any response to hails? He asks. Negative, CIC answers. Radio silence continues. At this range, silence is not uncertainty. It is intent. The electro-optical feed sharpens again. Hull numbers become easier to read. Superstructures resolve into clean detail. These are not patrol ships drifting too close by chance. These are warships operating exactly where they mean to be. On the flight deck, wind moves across tie-down chains. Sailors begin moving again, but more slowly now. Every motion deliberate. Nobody runs. Nobody needs to. The carrier does not speed up. The carrier does not slow down. At sea, speed is authority. Predictability is power. Russian ships are maintaining a blocking posture, CIC says carefully. They are not crossing our bow. They are narrowing our corridor. That difference matters. Crossing the bow would force a response. Narrowing the corridor invites one. At 3.8 miles, one Russian ship edges in closer than the others. Its wake grows denser as it adds 2 knots. The move is subtle, but the sensors catch it immediately. Contact 3 increasing speed, CIC calls. Now 27 knots. The carrier answers with silence. No alarm, no sudden maneuver. Only the steady pulse of turbines driving thousands of tons of steel forward on the same heading they held moments before. Inside CIC, analysts watch the electronic picture. The Russian ships are emitting only what they need to navigate and coordinate. No fire control radar, no targeting illumination. They remain below the line. In this kind of distance, doctrine matters more than hardware. One side is testing pressure, the other is testing discipline. 4 miles becomes 3.5. A Russian ship to starboard adjusts again, its bow turning inward just enough to be noticed. Not enough to violate navigation rules, enough to send a message. The bridge team sees it. They say nothing. CPA holding, CIC reports. Still decreasing, but slowly. On the chart, the carrier's projected path threads the tightening gap. There is space, barely, but barely is still space. The Russian formation tightens once more, then holds. They have set the line. Now they wait. Waiting is the most dangerous moment. No engines surge, no weapons appear, nothing looks dramatic from the outside. But inside the ship, every sensor is alive. Every camera is capturing. Every decision is entering a log that will remember everything. The captain speaks at last. Continue steady. Record everything. It is not a challenge. It is not defiance. It is procedure. 3 nautical miles. At this distance, crew movement is visible to the naked eye. The low hum of engines can be felt through the water. You can sense how little space exists between control and miscalculation. 5 Russian warships hold their line. 1 American aircraft carrier keeps moving forward. No shot has been fired, but the pressure is no longer theoretical. At 5:29 local time, the distance stops closing. Not because the Russian ships fall back, but because the carrier's steady advance forces the geometry to resolve. The arc they built must now choose, close fully or open just enough to avoid contact. Inside the Combat Information Center, no one reacts to the pause. Pauses at sea are fragile. CPA holding at 3.1 nautical miles, the watch officer reports. Relative motion stable. Stable is good. Predictable is better. The Russian ships keep formation, but the precision begins to loosen at the edges. One ship lags by a few seconds. Another overcorrects, then eases back. Tiny flaws, invisible to the eye, obvious to systems built to miss nothing. On the bridge, the captain studies the surface picture without blinking. Any changes in emissions? He asks. Minimal, CIC replies. Same profiles. There is no fire control radar, no hard lock. They are still working the edge, testing limits without crossing them. Below deck, the carrier keeps its normal pulse. Thousands of systems running exactly the way they were built to run. The ship does not tighten under pressure. It does not hesitate. It is designed to absorb tension and keep moving. Up on the flight deck, the aircraft stay where they are. No catapult cycle, no deck crews break into a rush. From above, the carrier almost looks unconcerned. That is deliberate. A sudden launch would change the entire mood. Silence keeps the moment controlled. At 2.9 miles, a helicopter lifts from the carrier's deck. Not fast, not aggressive. It rises the same way it always does, settling into a stable hover before moving ahead. Its presence is exact. Not a threat, not an accident. A witness. The helicopter holds altitude well clear of Russian airspace. Its sensors face outward. Cameras record continuously. Infrared maps the wakes, the exhaust plumes, the heat signatures of engines, forcing steel through open water. Everything is being captured. One of the Russian ships shifts again, its bow turning outward by a few degrees. A small move, but enough to widen the gap. Another follows a moment later. The line is beginning to loosen. Inside CIC, the watch team marks every change. Time, bearing, speed. The record grows longer, cleaner, harder to dispute. This is the answer. No warnings, no threats, no escalation. Just documentation, discipline, and a refusal to give way. At this distance, professionalism is the real instrument of pressure. The Russian ships continue to shadow the carrier, but the blocking posture begins to fade. Their arc softens into a curve. The curve loosens into a broad screen. They are still close enough to be seen clearly, but no longer placed to force a turn. The carrier moves through the space they had tried to close off, slowly, deliberately. At 2.5 miles, the wake patterns change again. One Russian ship drops a knot, another keeps speed but opens the separation. The formation exhales. Nobody says it aloud, but everyone sees it. Pressure can move in both directions. On the bridge, the captain speaks again. Maintain course! The helmsman's hands do not shift. The helicopter finishes a wide orbit, never crossing a line, never posturing. Its sensors collect the details the eye cannot. Engine vibration, movement on deck, the smallest throttle changes that will tell the full story long after these ships are over the horizon. The Russian ships do not challenge the aircraft. They do not illuminate it. They allow it to remain. That matters. At 2 miles, the risk of collision drops sharply. The most dangerous point is already slipping behind them. Not because anyone made a dramatic retreat, but because no one forced the situation too far. The carrier continues on course, immense and unhurried. Behind her, the Russian ships are still there, still watching, still near, but no longer controlling the geometry. Inside the ship, the atmosphere does not change. No celebration, no visible release, only a quiet recognition that restraint held. This was never about weapons alone. It was about control. And this time, control never left the bridge. At 5:36 local time, this is the phase where errors usually happen. Not at first contact, not during the approach. In the quiet moments after the pressure peaks, when people begin to believe the worst is over and discipline can slip by inches. Inside the Combat Information Center, the watch team stays fully locked in. Eyes move in a practice cycle from radar to optics to electronic readouts. No one relaxes. Not yet. CPA increasing, the officer reports. Now 2.2 nautical miles. The number should feel reassuring. It does not. On the surface picture, the Russian formation is no longer perfectly balanced. One ship drifts slightly ahead. Its wake overlaps the turbulence from a nearby hull. Another holds position a little too long before correcting. The spacing remains professional, but the precision is no longer exact. Then it happens. A Russian ship on the port side makes a sharper turn than before. Not reckless, not openly hostile, but sudden enough to stand out. Contact 2 altered course, CIC calls. Port 5 degrees, speed unchanged. 5 degrees is not much. At this range, it is still a choice. On the bridge, the captain watches the move develop on the repeater display. He does not speak right away. He waits for the motion to finish, for the systems to confirm whether this is a test or simply a correction. The ship steadies again. No collision threat, no bow crossing. Just a brief instant when steel and intent moved closer than expected. The carrier does not respond. More than anything else, that changes the balance. The Russian ship holds the new heading for a few seconds, then eases back. Its wake thins as speed falls slightly. The ships behind it adjust too, slower now, less tightly linked. The blocking posture is over. It does not end with drama. It simply dissolves. At 1.9 miles, the Russian ships begin opening their spacing. The arc breaks into sections. The sections become separate tracks again. Formation loosening, CIC reports. Shadowing posture only. Shadowing means observation. Blocking means influence. That difference is everything. Overhead, the helicopter remains steady. Sensors still gathering data. Orbit-wide, neutral, and consistent. Its role has not changed. That consistency sends its own message. We are still here. We are still watching. On the flight deck, crews move with a little more freedom now. Even so, the tempo remains controlled. No one celebrates. No one assumes the encounter is finished. The carrier keeps the same heading she held before the Russian ships appeared. That continuity matters. At 1.5 miles, the nearest Russian ship slides astern. Its bow no longer lines up with the carrier's projected path. Another mirrors the move from the opposite side. The corridor widens, and no one on the bridge feels the need to say it out loud. At last, the captain speaks. Log the maneuver changes. No commentary, no interpretation, only facts. Inside CIC, the log fills with timestamps and bearings, a complete account of how pressure was applied and how it failed to force a turn. The Russian ships remain close, but the energy has changed. Their wakes no longer cut across the carrier's path. Their movements are reactive now, not controlling. The moment has passed. At 1 nautical mile, the chance of escalation drops sharply. Tension still remains, but now it is residual rather than active. The kind that lingers after restraint wins. The carrier continues ahead, massive and unchanged. Behind her, 5 Russian warships settle into a loose trailing pattern, maintaining presence without control. They have made their point. So has the carrier. No one fired, no one raised their voice, no one on the bridge lost composure. But the result is clear. The attempt to block is over. What remains is observation, documentation, and slowly growing distance between ships that were never meant to touch. This is how pressure breaks at sea. Not with noise, with refusal. The surface picture settles. 5 Russian warships still remain on radar, but their vectors no longer cut across the carrier's path. They trail at a distance now, spread wider, holding parallel courses that signal presence without interference, shadowing, not blocking. Inside the Combat Information Center, the watch team confirms what the displays already show. Contact steady, CPA increasing, no further maneuvering. The wording is neutral, precise, and complete. On the bridge of the USS George Washington, nothing visibly changes. The captain does not speak to the crew. He does not have to. The ship continues exactly as it had before the encounter ever began. Same heading, same speed, same calm sense of command. That consistency is the ending. Below deck, systems ease back 1 layer at a time. Status indicators shift from amber to green. No announcement follows, only quiet recognition. The carrier's internal rhythm never truly broke. It simply tightened, then relaxed. Up on the flight deck, the helicopter finishes its last orbit and turns back toward the ship. It touches down smoothly, rotors slowing without ceremony. Its task is over. Not because anything dramatic happened, but because nothing moved beyond control. The sensors keep recording until the separation is no longer a concern. Every course change, every throttle movement, every second of silence is preserved in the log. The Russian ships hold their parallel tracks for a few minutes more, then begin opening the distance even further. One angles slightly away, another reduces speed. The formation loses its shape, breaking into separate movements instead of acting as one coordinated line. The moment is over. No message is broadcast. No signal flags are raised. No one claims a victory. At sea, outcomes are rarely announced. They are understood. The carrier did not turn. The carrier did not speed up. The carrier did not open fire. And still, the attempted barrier did not hold. From a distance, it could seem almost uneventful. 5 ships approached. 5 ships withdrew. Steel past steel without contact. But inside the recordings, inside the logs, the full story is there. This was never a contest of firepower. It was a measure of resolve. In naval operations, restraint is not weakness. It is discipline. Built through repetition and drilled into crews who know that the most dangerous moments are often the ones when nothing appears to happen. Because in those moments, judgment decides everything. The USS George Washington continues its transit. The water ahead remains open and unchanged. Behind it, the Russian ships stay visible for a while, then disappear one by one into the haze at the horizon. Presence noted, pressure absorbed, course unchanged. By the time the final contact drops below radar range, the carrier has already moved on. There will be no headlines written aboard the ship, no medals handed out, no speeches delivered, only a finished log entry and one more lesson fixed in memory. At sea, power is not measured by how loudly you act. It is measured by whether you are forced to change your path at all. And on this day, only one ship determined the direction of travel.